3 months had passed since the rescue, and New Sejong had passed since the rescue, and New Sejong had never looked more beautiful. The colony had rebuilt from the damage of the raid, and today the central plaza was filled with people gathered for a ceremony that meant more than any harvest festival ever could. A memorial stood at the heart of the plaza, a simple stone pillar bearing the name of the child who had not come home. Flowers surrounded its base. Gifts from families across the colony and beyond. Representatives from dozens of species had traveled to attend the ceremony. Their presence, a testament to how far the story had spread. Governor Kim stood before the assembly, his voice carrying through the silent crowd. "We gather today to remember," he said, "to remember the terror of that night when our children were taken from us, to remember the courage of those who went to bring them back, to remember the sacrifice of those who gave everything so that our children could come home." In the front row, Yuna sat with Sin Yeon pressed close against her side. Her daughter had nightmares sometimes, echoes of those terrible days in captivity. But she was healing. They all were. The ceremony continued with speeches and songs, with tears and moments of quiet reflection. When it ended, the crowd dispersed slowly. Families lingering to embrace and share memories. Among the visitors was Ambassador Torvak, who had insisted on attending personally. He approached Yuna and Seo Yan as they stood before the memorial. "Sergeant Beak," he said, inclining his massive head respectfully, "I wanted to speak with you before I returned to the Union." Yuna looked up at the towering alien with something close to gratitude. She had heard about his speech to the council, how he had warned them not to interfere with humanity's response. "Thank you for supporting us," she said. "The council might have blocked our fleet if not for your words." Torvak made a rumbling sound that might have been a chuckle. "I did not support you out of friendship, Sergeant. I supported you because I remembered what your species becomes when your children are threatened. The galaxy needed to see it too." He looked out at the gathered humans, at the children playing among the memorial flowers. "My people made war on yours once," he continued. "We thought we knew what we were facing. We were wrong. You are not dangerous because of your weapons or your ships. You are dangerous because of this." He gestured toward the families around them. "This bond you share. This love that makes you unstoppable. Every species loves their children, but none protect them quite like you do." Seo Yan tugged on her mother's hand. "Mommy, who is the big alien?" "This is Ambassador Torvak," Yuna explained. "His people are our friends now." Torvak knelt down, bringing his tusked face closer to the child's level, a gesture that would have terrified most species, but seemed to delight Seo Yan. "You are brave," he told her. "I heard how you helped the younger children while you were captive. Your mother should be proud." "She is," Yuna confirmed, ruffling her daughter's hair. Far away, in the great chamber of the Galactic Union, a historic vote was taking place. The resolution had been debated for weeks, but the outcome was never really in doubt when the final tally was announced. It passed unanimously. The resolution declared that any crime committed against human children would be treated as a crime against humanity itself, with all the consequences that designation implied. It was the first time such protection had been extended to any single species. Critics argued it was unfair, that other species deserved equal consideration. Ambassador Chun Wei-lin addressed those concerns directly. "This resolution does not diminish the value of any species' children," she said. "It simply acknowledges a reality that every civilization in this galaxy has now witnessed. When human children are taken, humans come for them. They come regardless of cost, regardless of odds, regardless of what anyone else thinks. This resolution exists not to elevate humanity, but to protect those who might be foolish enough to provoke us in Vrixathi space." The aftermath of the human response continued to reshape society. The consortium had surrendered unconditionally, agreeing to dismantle their slave trade operations under human inspection vessels from Earth now patrolled their systems. Ensuring compliance, Overseer Krathax had not survived the battle. His ship had been specifically targeted by the human fleet, destroyed with all hands before it could escape. No one mourned him. The surviving Rixathi leadership had learned a terrible lesson about the species they had dismissed as soft prey. That lesson was now being taught to every generation that followed back on New Sejong. Minjun stood on a stage in the colony's main auditorium. A medal hanging around his neck, Governor Kim had presented it personally, honoring the 11-year-old for his courage and leadership during the Myosh captivity. The crowd applauded as Minjun accepted the recognition, but he seemed uncomfortable with the attention. When the ceremony ended, a reporter approached him for a statement. "How does it feel to be called a hero?" she asked. Minjun shook his head. "I am not a hero," he said simply. "The heroes are the ones who came for us. Captain Kang and her team, Admiral Park and his fleet, Sergeant Beak and all the others. They risked their lives to bring us home. I just tried to keep everyone calm until they arrived." His words spread across the galaxy, repeated in news reports and diplomatic discussions. They captured something essential about what had happened. The children had endured, had supported each other, had refused to break. But it was the response of the adults that truly demonstrated human nature. Yuna returned to her duties as a security officer. Though she had been promoted and reassigned, she now commanded a rapid response unit specifically designed for rescue operations, a permanent reminder that humanity would never again be slow to respond when its children were threatened. The unit trained constantly, preparing for scenarios they hoped would never happen. Other species had noticed what humans could do when properly motivated. The Rixathi were not the only ones who had preyed on isolated settlements throughout the frontier. Other would-be raiders quietly abandoned their plans. Word had spread about the human response, about the fleet that had charged into impossible odds, about the soldiers who had fought through a fortified facility to reach their children. It was safer to find other targets, other victims, other species who did not transform into something terrifying when their young were threatened in a Rixathi educational facility on their homeworld. A new class of young reptilians settled into their seats for orientation. Their instructor, an older female who had survived the human war, activated a display showing an image of Eartha, blue and green world that looked peaceful and inviting. "There are many dangerous species in the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying the weight of bitter experience. "Some are strong, some are fast. Some possess technology beyond our understanding. But there is only one species you must never, ever provoke." She changed the display to show human warships in battle formation, then to images of the assault on the processing facility. "The humans," she continued, "they look weak. They are small, their bodies are soft, and they seem to value peace. Do not be deceived. Do not touch their children. Do not threaten their children. Do not even look at their children with hostile intent, because if you do, the humans will come for you. They will cross the galaxy to find you. They will sacrifice everything to reach you. They will not stop until every last one of their young is safe. And they will not stop there." She paused, letting the silence emphasize her words. "They will make certain you never threaten anyone's children ever again." The young Rixathi stared at the display with wide eyes, absorbing a lesson that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. It was the same lesson being taught on 100 other worlds, in 100 other languages, to species who had watched the human response and understood its implications. Humanity had sent a message that resonated across the galaxy. We will protect our own, no matter the cost, and those who forgot that message would learn it again, as painfully as necessary. On New Sejong, as the twin suns set over the rebuilt plaza, Yuna walked home with Xiao Yan's hand clasped firmly in hers. The nightmares were fading, the wounds were healing, and life was slowly returning to normal. But some things had changed forever. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of, and they would never forget. "Mommy," Xiao Yan asked as they walked, "will the bad aliens ever come back?" Yuna looked down at her daughter with a smile that held steel beneath its warmth. "No," she promised, "they will not. They learned their lesson, and for the first time in galactic history, when a human made a promise like that, every species in the known universe believed them." The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 27 warships arranged in an arrowhead pointed directly at Vrixath Prime's third moon, ahead of them. The Vrixathi defense fleet scrambled to meet the threat. 62 vessels of various sizes backed by orbital weapons platforms. Bristling with cannons, the numbers favored the defenders by more than 2-1. Admiral Park studied the tactical display without emotion. He had expected heavy opposition, had planned for it, and was prepared to pay whatever price victory demanded. "All ships. This is the Admiral," he announced through the fleet channel. "Our children are on that moon. We will break through this fleet. We will destroy any obstacle in our path, and we will bring them home. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when someone takes what is ours." The Vrixathi commander, Admiral Vrextel, watched the human formation with confident disdain. His fleet was larger. His weapons were powerful, and he held the defensive advantage. He had crushed enemies with worse odds many times before. "They are fools to attack us directly," he told his bridge crew. "Open fire when they enter maximum range. We will shatter their fleet and add their survivors to our inventory." The two forces closed the distance between them, sensors tracking and weapons locking at optimal firing range. The Vrixathi fleet unleashed a devastating barrage. Hundreds of missiles and energy beams shrieking toward the human ships. The Indomitable shuddered as enemy fire slammed into her shields around her. Other human vessels took hits that would have crippled ships from most species, but the humans did not slow down. They did not pull back to reassess. They accelerated into the enemy fire, closing the distance with suicidal aggression. "Return fire," Admiral Park commanded. "All batteries. Continuous bombardment. We push through. We do not stop for anything." Human weapons spoke in answer. Plasma cannons and missile salvos tearing into the Vrixathi formation. A Vrixathi cruiser exploded under concentrated fire. Then another. The humans were taking damage, but they kept coming, their ships trailing smoke and debris, but still fighting. Admiral Vrextel felt the first stirring of unease as he watched the battle unfold. "Why do they not retreat?" he demanded. "Their lead ships are heavily damaged. They should be falling back to regroup." His tactical officer checked the displays with growing alarm. "They are not retreating, Admiral. They are increasing speed. The damaged vessels are moving to the front of the formation." It was a tactic no sane commander would employ, using crippled ships as battering rams to absorb fire while undamaged. Vessels followed in their wake. The crews of those lead ships knew they were unlikely to survive. They pushed forward anyway. Aboard the destroyer U.S. Guangzhou, Captain Li Sunyang fought her ship through a storm of enemy fire. Her vessel was burning. Half her crew dead or wounded, but her engines still worked and her weapons still fired. "Engineering, give me everything you have," she called through the smoke-filled bridge. "All power to forward shields and weapons. We are opening a hole for the fleet." The Guangzhou plowed into the Vrixathi formation like a wounded animal that refused to die. Her guns blazed until the barrels melted. Her missiles launched until the tubes were empty when she finally exploded. She took 3 enemy ships with her and left a gap in the defensive line. The rest of the human fleet poured through that gap. Ship after ship followed the path the Guangzhou had carved. their guns hammering at the disorganized Vrixathi forces. What had begun as a coordinated defense became a chaotic melee admiral. Rextol watched in disbelief as his numerical advantage evaporated. The humans fought like nothing he had ever seen, taking insane risks, accepting horrific losses, never wavering for an instant when one of their ships died. The others simply closed ranks and kept coming. "They cannot sustain this," he insisted, his voice rising with desperation. "No species can absorb such casualties and continue fighting, but the humans could, because this was not about tactics or territory or political gain. This was about their children. For that, they would sacrifice everything." The space battle raged as the transport shuttles, carrying Aegis Squad, descended toward the moon's surface. Captain Kang piloted the lead shuttle through a nightmare of anti-aircraft fire. Her jaw clenched as explosions lit up the darkness around them. 30 seconds to the drop zone, she announced. "Check your gear and prepare for hot insertion." Yuna gripped her weapon and focused on the mission ahead. Everything she had done since the raid. The desperate journey to reach the fleet. The brutal training sessions to prepare for combat. The sleepless nights of worry. All of it led to this moment. The shuttle hit the ground hard, and the assault team poured out into a firefight. Vrixathi defenders had positioned themselves around the maintenance shaft entrance, their weapons creating a deadly crossfire, suppressing fire. Kang ordered, "First team, flank right and take out that heavy gun." The humans moved with fluid precision. Years of training guiding their actions, Yuna found herself operating on instinct, her body responding to threats before her conscious mind could process them. She shot a Vrixathi soldier emerging from cover. Then another, then a third. The defenders had expected their enemy to approach cautiously, probing for weaknesses. Instead, the humans attacked with overwhelming ferocity, closing to close quarters where their smaller size became an advantage in the tight corridors. Within 3 minutes, the entrance was secured. "Move," Kang commanded. "We have 7 minutes before reinforcements arrive." The team plunged into the maintenance shaft, navigating by the facility maps they had memorized during the journey. Ahead of them lay Section 7 and the children. They had come to rescue. Alarms wailed throughout the facility as the Vrixathi realized they were under direct assault. Guards rushed toward the sounds of fighting, but the humans were faster, cutting through opposition with brutal efficiency. Yuna led the way down a corridor marked on their maps as the final approach to the holding cells. 2 guards stood before a heavy security door, their weapons raised. She did not slow down. Her first shot took one guard in the chest. Her second dropped the other before he could fire. Behind her, a demolition specialist slapped a charge on the door and blew it open. The room beyond held cells filled with children, human children, their faces pressed against the transparent barriers, their eyes wide with hope and fear. "We are here," Yuna called out, her voice cracking with emotion. "We are here to take you home." The children erupted in cheers and tears. Reaching through the barriers toward their rescuers, Yuna moved from cell to cell, searching frantically until she found the face she was looking for. Seo Yan stood at the front of her cell, her small hands pressed against the barrier, her eyes locked on her mother. "Mommy," she whispered, "I knew you would come." The barriers opened, and Yuna pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her tight as tears streamed down both their faces around them. Other soldiers reunited with children they had never met but would have died to protect. Minjun organized the younger children into groups, helping them stay calm amid the chaos. Even now, after everything he had been through, he was still looking out for others. "We need to move," Captain Kang announced. Though her own voice was rough with emotion, the fleet is still fighting to secure extraction. "We hold here until the shuttles can reach us," as if to emphasize her point. Explosions echoed from somewhere above, the sound of the space battle still raging in orbit. The team set up defensive positions around the holding area, preparing for the counterattack they knew was coming. It arrived in force, Rixati. Soldiers poured through the corridors from multiple directions, their commanders having realized where the humans had struck. The battle for Section 7 became a desperate siege, with the Aegis team holding choke points against waves of attackers. Yuna fought alongside her comrades, never straying far from where the children huddled in the center of their defensive perimeter. Every Rixathi who made it past the outer defenses met her rifle. Ammunition status? Khan called out, running low across the board. Came the reply. We have maybe 10 minutes of sustained fire left. Then we hold for 10 minutes in orbit. The tide was finally turning. The human fleet had lost 8 ships, with another dozen heavily damaged. But the Rixathi defensive line had collapsed. Admiral Park directed his remaining vessels toward the moon, their guns clearing a path through the orbital platforms. Ground team. Report status. He transmitted. 42 children secured. Kang responded, her voice punctuated by weapons fire under heavy attack. Ammunition critical. Extraction shuttle is 2 minutes out. Hold position. We are almost there. Those 2 minutes felt like hours as the team fought to maintain their perimeter. Brisathi bodies piled up in the corridors, but more kept coming. Then a sound cut through the chaos, the roar of shuttle engines. Extraction is here. Someone shouted, move the children now. The evacuation was controlled chaos. Soldiers guiding children toward the shuttle, while others provided covering fire. Yuna carried Seo Yeon in her arms, refusing to let go even as she moved toward safety. One by one, the children boarded the shuttle. Minjun was among the last, helping younger kids climb aboard before finally accepting a hand up himself. Captain Kang counted heads as the shuttle lifted off 42 children, plus the team. Every child they came for had been rescued as they rose through the moon's thin atmosphere. The holding cell was cold and smelled of chemicals that made 11-year-old Park Min-chun's eyes water around him. 42 other children huddled together on the bare metal floor, some crying quietly, while others stared at nothing with hollow expressions. 3 days had passed since the Rixathi had taken them from New Sejong. 3 days of fear and confusion aboard this alien vessel. Minjun had decided on the first day that someone needed to stay strong. His father was a firefighter back on the colony, a man who ran toward danger while others fled. Minjun could not run toward anything locked in this cell, but he could help the younger children stay brave. Everyone gather close, he whispered, keeping his voice low so the guards outside would not hear. We need to stay together and look after each other. 8-year-old Seo Yeon-beek crawled over to sit beside him, her face streaked with dried tears, but her jaw set with determination. I want my mom, she said quietly. Our parents are looking for us. Minjun told her with conviction. He forced himself to feel humans never abandon their children. They are coming, I know it. The older children began organizing the group, sharing the meager food rations so that the youngest ate first. They created sleeping shifts so someone was always awake to comfort those who had nightmares. They whispered stories and played quiet games to pass the endless hours. The Rixathi guards found this behavior confusing. They had transported captives from dozens of species over the years, and the response was always the same: panic, despair, and eventual submission. But these human children refused to break. They supported each other with a bond that seemed unnatural to the reptilian slayers. On the second day, one of the guards entered the cell to separate a crying 6-year-old from the group. Minjun stepped between them, his small body blocking the guard's path. You cannot take her, he said, his voice shaking but firm. The guard made a hissing sound of amusement and shoved Minjun aside with one powerful arm. But before he could grab the child, every other kid in the cell surged forward, forming a protective wall around her. They were small and weak compared to the massive Rixahathi, but they stood together, refusing to yield. The guard could have forced his way through, could have hurt them badly if he wanted. Instead, he hesitated. Something in the children's united defiance making him uncertain, he retreated from the cell without the child, muttering to himself about strange human behavior. Seo Yeon started teaching the younger children a clapping game that afternoon, a simple rhythm pattern that her mother had taught her soon. The sound of small hands meeting in coordinated beats filled the cell. The guards found this incomprehensible. Why would captives facing slavery spend their time playing? But the children understood. The game gave them something to focus on, something to share, something that was theirs even in this terrible place, far across the stars. The human fleet continued its pursuit. Intelligence reports flowed into the command center of the Indomitable, as Lieutenant Commander Choi Hyun-soo worked to understand their enemy. He had managed to crack several Rixathi communication codes, giving them access to military frequencies. Admiral, I have intercepted a transmission from the Rixathi command ship. Hyun-soo reported. They have arrived at the processing facility on the third moon. The children are being transferred to the surface. Admiral Park studied the tactical display, calculating distances and response times. How long until we reach them? At current speed, approximately 18 hours. 18 hours felt like an eternity. But the Admiral knew pushing the engines harder risked mechanical failures that would delay them even more. Maintain course and speed, he ordered, and continue monitoring their communications. I want to know everything they say. The intercepted messages painted a disturbing picture. The Rixathi were preparing to catalog the children and assign them to various buyers. Some would go to labor camps, others to wealthy households as servants, and a few to even worse fates that made the intelligence officers sick to read about. But the messages also revealed something else. The Rixathi were nervous. Word of the approaching human fleet had spread through their command structure. And while their leaders projected confidence, lower-ranking officers asked worried questions about the unusual response to their raid. Captain Kang De-yeon called Aegis Squad together for a special briefing. The team had received detailed scans of the facility layout, courtesy of a reconnaissance probe that had slipped past Rixathi sensors. The children are being held in Section 7, Kang explained, highlighting the area on a holographic display that is deep inside the complex, protected by multiple security checkpoints and at least 300 guards. Our insertion point will be here. She pointed to an access tunnel on the facility's eastern side, maintenance shaft that connects to the processing areas. It will be tight, but it gives us a direct path to the holding cells. Yuna studied the display with intense focus, memorizing every corridor and junction. Somewhere in that maze of metal corridors, her daughter was waiting. She would find Seo Yeon if she had to tear through every wall in the facility with her bare hands. What about enemy response time? One of the team members asked. Once we engage, how long before reinforcements arrive? 7 minutes from the barracks to Section 7, Kang replied. That gives us a narrow window to secure the children and establish defensive positions. Once we have them, we hold until the fleet breaks through and extraction shovels can reach us. How long might that take? Kang exchanged a glance with Yuna before answering, unknown. It could be minutes. It could be hours. We hold as long as necessary. That evening, the fleet received another communication from the Rixathi. This time, the message was not a negotiation offer. It was a demonstration. The view screen showed Overseer Krothax standing in what appeared to be a medical facility behind him. Human children were visible in holding cells, their faces pressed against the transparent barriers. Admiral Park, Krothax began. Your continued pursuit has become tiresome. I offer you one final opportunity to withdraw. Accept a reasonable settlement, and most of your children will be returned unharmed. All of them, Park repeated, his voice flat and hard. Return all of them. Krathax made a gesture, and two guards dragged a teenage boy into view. The boy struggled against their grip, but he was no match for the massive reptilians. Perhaps you need motivation to be reasonable, the overseer said. He drew a curved blade from his belt. What happened next was broadcast to every ship in the human fleet when it was over. 42 children remained. The communication ended with Krathax's smug face filling the screen. You have 12 hours to agree to terms, Admiral. After that, we will select another example. For a long moment, no one on the bridge spoke. Then Admiral Park turned to face his crew, and they saw something in his eyes that none of them had ever witnessed before. It was not anger. Though anger was part of it, it was not grief. Though grief was there too, it was something older and deeper. An ancient fury that had protected human children since the first parents walked the earth. All ships, Park said, his voice carrying through the fleet-wide channel. Maximum combat speed. We attack in 6 hours. The response from his captains was unanimous, and immediate ships that were already straining their engines pushed harder, their crews accepting the risk of catastrophic failure without hesitation. Engineers worked miracles to squeeze extra speed from overtaxed systems across the fleet. Weapons were charged, assault teams were briefed, and prayers were offered to whatever powers might listen. In the Aegis-ready room, Yuna sat alone, staring at a photograph of Seo Yeon that she kept in her breast pocket. Her hands trembled with rage and terror, emotions she could not afford to show to her teammates. She is alive, a voice said from the doorway. Captain Kang entered and sat beside her. Your daughter was not the one. She is alive. Yuna nodded, not trusting herself to speak. I have never seen the fleet like this. Kang continued quietly. I have served for 15 years, fought in a dozen engagements, but I have never seen anything like what I am seeing now. The Vrixathi have no idea what they have awakened. They think they understand us because they have read our files and studied our biology. They see that we are smaller and weaker than many species, and they assume that means we are less dangerous. They are wrong. Yuna finally looked up, meeting her captain's eyes. They killed a child to make a point, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They murdered a boy in front of his friends to show us they were serious. Kang nodded grimly. And now they will learn what happens when humans get serious. Throughout the fleet, the same transformation was taking place. Something fundamental had shifted in every human heart. The Vrixathi had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed, and now they would face the consequences. In the Galactic Union monitoring station, observing the human fleet, alien analysts watched with growing unease. Their acceleration rate has increased by 40%, one reported. They are exceeding safe operational parameters. Their weapon systems are cycling continuously. They are preparing for immediate engagement upon arrival. The station commander, a Torvan observer, watched the data with grim understanding. Contact Ambassador Torvak, he ordered. Tell him it has begun. Tell him the humans are coming, and nothing in the galaxy will stop them now. The Galactic Union Security Council chamber was an impressive space. A vast circular room where representatives of over 200 species gathered to maintain peace across the known. Galaxy Ambassador Chen Weilin stood at the central podium, her diplomatic training fighting against the rage that burned in her chest. The Vrixathi have committed an act of war against humanity, she declared, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. They invaded our colony, attacked our citizens, and abducted 43 of our children. We demand immediate authorization to pursue and retrieve our people. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. The Grellian ambassador, a tall being covered in feathery sensory organs, rose to speak. The council sympathizes with humanity's distress, she said in measured tones. However, We must consider the diplomatic implications. The Vrixathi Consortium operates in neutral territory beyond Union jurisdiction. A military incursion could destabilize the entire region. They took our children, Ambassador Chun repeated, her diplomatic mask slipping slightly. What implication could matter more than that? The Cathorian delegate made a gesture of dismissal with his tentacles. Many species have suffered losses to Vrixathi raids over the centuries. He said, "It is tragic. But launching military action will only invite retaliation. The wise course is to file a formal protest and seek compensation through established channels." Compensation? Chen's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You suggest we accept payment for our stolen children? Before the Cathorian could respond, another delegate rose from the back of the chamber. The assembly fell silent as Ambassador Torvak of the Torvan Empire stepped forward. The Torvan were massive beings, 3 meters tall with thick gray skin and tusked faces that spoke of their predatory ancestry. They had fought a brutal war against humanity 50 years ago. A conflict that had ended in mutual respect rather than victory for either side. "I must speak," Torvak announced, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. The council speaker nodded for him to proceed. Torvak looked around the room, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. "Many of you know that my people once warred with the humans," he began. "We thought them weak because they were small. We thought them soft because they valued peace. We learned otherwise." He paused, letting his words settle over the assembly. "What you do not understand, what you cannot understand until you have seen it, is what humans become when their children are threatened. They change. They become something else entirely." The Grelian ambassador shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Ambassador Torvak, surely you are exaggerating. All species are protective of their young." "No," Torvak said firmly. "I am not exaggerating. During our war, we captured a human colony. We did not harm the children. We simply held them as bargaining leverage. We thought the humans would negotiate for their return." He closed his eyes briefly, remembering. They came for those children with everything they had. They threw ships against our defenses that we had, calculated would never fall. They lost 10,000 soldiers breaking through our lines. And they did not slow down. They did not stop. They did not negotiate. They did not accept anything less than every single child returned safely. And when it was over, they looked at us with eyes that held no hatred. Only a simple promise. Never again. The chamber was utterly silent. "I am telling you this," Torvak continued, "because you need to understand what you are about to witness. The humans will not wait for your authorization. They are already moving. If you try to stop them, they will go through you. And if you side with the Vrixathi, if you protect the ones who took their children, they will remember." He turned to look directly at Ambassador Chun. "I am not asking the council to authorize human action. I am warning the council not to interfere, for your own sake. Stay out of their way." The vote that followed was contentious, but in the end, the council granted limited authorization for a rescue operation. It was the first time in Union history that such authorization had been given in less than a standard day aboard the U.S. Indomitable. Admiral Park received the news with grim satisfaction. He had not planned to wait for permission regardless, but it simplified matters to have official sanction. His fleet had grown during the journey. As human ships from across the sector diverted to join the pursuit, 23 warships now followed the Vrixathi trail, with more arriving every admiral. "We have a shuttle requesting emergency docking," his communications officer reported. "It is Sergeant Unibeek from New Sejong." Park frowned slightly. "A sergeant? How did she get here?" "Records show she commandeered a fast courier from the colony, sir. She claims her daughter is among the abducted children." The admiral considered for a moment, then nodded. "Allow her to dock. I will meet her personally." Eunice stepped off the shuttle into the Indomitable's hangar bay. Still wearing the dusty uniform she had thrown on during the raid, Admiral Park stood waiting for her. His posture formal, but his eyes understanding. "Sergeant Beak," he said, "you have come a long way." "My daughter is on that ship, Admiral," Una replied. Her voice steady, but her hands clenched at her sides. "I need to be part of the rescue mission. I am qualified for combat insertion." "My record shows." Park held up a hand to stop her. "I have already reviewed your file. Sergeant, top marks in tactical training, experience in hostile environment operations, commendations for bravery." He paused, studying her face. "You understand that this will be dangerous. The Vrixathi facility is heavily defended, and we expect significant resistance. With respect, Admiral, nothing will stop me from reaching my daughter. You can put me on the assault team, or you can lock me in the brig. But the moment we reach that facility, I will find a way to get to her." A slight smile crossed Park's weathered features. "I believe you would. Report to Captain Kang Du-Yeon of Aegis Squad. You are now assigned to the ground assault team." Meanwhile, in the intelligence center of the Indomitable, Lieutenant Commander Choi Hyun-soo worked to piece together information about their enemy. He had intercepted dozens of Vrixathi communications, building a picture of where the children were being taken. The destination is a facility on Rixath Prime's third moon, he reported to the command staff. It is their primary processing center for captured individuals. Processing center, someone muttered with disgust. Hyun-soo continued, pulling up tactical displays. The facility is protected by a defense fleet of approximately 60 vessels and orbital weapons platforms. Ground defenses include automated turrets, patrol units, and an estimated 2,000 Vrixathi soldiers. They outnumber us significantly. The first officer observed, "Can we call for reinforcements?" Admiral Park shook his head. "Every hour we wait is another hour our children spend in captivity. We go with what we have. We will find a way." In the mess hall, off-duty crew members gathered around display screens showing news coverage of the crisis. The story had spread across human space and beyond, igniting outrage that transcended political boundaries on Earth. Millions marched in the streets demanding action on Mars. The colonial government had pledged 3 additional warships to the rescue fleet, even on distant stations and outposts. Humans who had never met the families of New Sejong donated money, supplies, and prayers. Captain Kang Du-Yeon briefed her Aegis team in their ready room. Reviewing infiltration routes and contingency plans, Una sat among them, memorizing every detail with fierce concentration. These soldiers were the best humanity had to offer, and they had welcomed her without question. "Our primary objective is the children," Kang emphasized. "Everything else is secondary. We go in fast. We secure the holding areas, and we protect those kids until extraction is complete." "Rules of engagement?" one of the team members asked. Kang's expression hardened. "Anyone who stands between us and those children does not walk away. We give them one chance to surrender, and only one. The Vrixathi made their choice when they took our people. Now, they live with the consequences." The fleet pushed deeper into neutral space, following the trail left by the Vrixathi convoy behind them. The Galactic Union watched with a mixture of fascination and unease. No species had ever mounted such a response to a slaver raid. Most would file protests, negotiate ransoms, and eventually accept their losses. But the humans were different. They did not see their children as acceptable losses. They did not calculate the cost of rescue against the value of the captives. They simply came, with all the fury and determination their species could muster on the 3rd day of pursuit. The fleet received a communication from the Vrixathi Consortium overseer. Krathax appeared on the view screen, his reptilian features arranged in what he probably thought was a reasonable expression. "Human vessels. This is Overseer Krathax of the Vrixathi Consortium," he announced. We are willing to negotiate for the return of some of your people. Withdraw your fleet, and we will discuss terms." Admiral Park stood before the screen, his face expressionless. "Return all of our children immediately and unconditionally, or we will come and take them." Krathax made a hissing sound of amusement. "You are in no position to make demands. Admiral, our forces far outnumber yours. Be reasonable, and perhaps we can reach an arrangement that benefits both parties." Park leaned forward slightly. "I will say this once, and only once." The twin suns of Kepler 442 dipped below the horizon as the people of New Sejong gathered in the central plaza for their annual harvest festival. Children ran between the decorated stalls, their laughter mixing with traditional music that floated through the warm evening air. Sergeant Yuna Beek stood near the food vendors, watching her 8-year-old daughter Seo Yeon chase her friends through the crowd. The colony had worked hard this year, and the celebration was well-deserved. And New Sejong was a modest world on the edge of Galactic Union space, home to 12,000 humans who had built something beautiful. On this distant frontier, the settlement had farms that stretched across the fertile valleys and small factories that produced everything the Perhivos colonists needed. It was peaceful here, far from the politics and conflicts of the inner systems. That peace shattered in an instant. The first warning came from the orbital defense station, a frantic transmission cut short by static. Yuna grabbed her communication device as alarms began to wail across the colony. Dark shapes descended from the clouds, blocky transport vessels flanked by sleek fighter craft. The Vrixathi had come. Yuna had heard stories about the Vrixathi, a reptilian species that operated in the lawless territories beyond Union protection. They were slavers who preyed on isolated settlements, taking what they wanted and disappearing before help could arrive. But they had never struck a human colony before. All security personnel to defensive positions. The emergency BROADCAST announced. Yuna was already running toward the armory when the first neural disruptor wave hit. The invisible pulse swept through the plaza like a silent wind. Adults collapsed where they stood, their bodies going rigid as the disruptor scrambled their nervous systems. Yuna felt her legs give out beneath her, and she crashed to the ground, unable to move anything except her eyes. She could only watch as the Vrixathi raiders descended on ropes from their hovering transports. They were tall creatures covered in dark green scales, with forearms and faces that seemed permanently frozen and expressions of contempt. They moved through the paralyzed crowd with practiced efficiency, ignoring the adults entirely. They were here for the children. Yuna screamed inside her mind as a Vrixathi soldier grabbed Seo Yeon by the arm and dragged her toward a transport. Her daughter was crying, reaching back toward her mother with desperate hands. But Yuna could not move, could not speak, could not do anything except watch her child be taken. The raid lasted less than 20 minutes when it was over. The Vrixathi had loaded 43 children onto their vessels and lifted off into the darkening sky. The paralysis began to fade. Just as the enemy ships disappeared into the clouds, Yuna pushed herself to her feet, her muscles burning with the after effects of the disruptor around her. Other parents were rising, their faces showing the same horror that gripped her heart. "They took them," a man nearby whispered, his voice breaking with disbelief and grief. Yuna ran to the communication center, her mind racing with desperate calculations. The Vrixathi ships were fast, but they would need to travel through normal space until they reached a safe distance for faster-than-light jump. If she could get a message out quickly enough, there might be a chance. The communication officer was already at his station, blood running from his nose where he had fallen during the paralysis. "I need an emergency transmission to Earth Command," Yuna said, her voice steady despite the chaos inside her. "Priority Alpha. Code Crimson." The officer's eyes widened at those words. But he did not hesitate. His fingers flew across the controls as he established the connection. Code Crimson had only been used 3 times in human history. It meant one thing. Human children had been taken by hostile forces 12,000 light years away. The message arrived at Earth Defense headquarters and was immediately forwarded to every human military vessel in the sector. Among those who received it was Admiral Park Jin-ho, commander of the 3rd Fleet, currently stationed at Proxima Station. The admiral was in his quarters reviewing supply reports when his communication officer burst through the door without knocking. "Sir, we have a code Crimson from the frontier." Admiral Park was on his feet before the officer finished speaking. He took the datapad and read the report, his weathered face growing harder with each line. 43 children taken from New Sejong by Vrixothi raiders. The youngest was 6 years old. The oldest was 14. "Get me the fleet commanders on secure channel," Park ordered, his voice carrying the cold edge of controlled fury. "All of them. Now." Within an hour, 17 warships of the 3rd Fleet had broken from their patrol routes and were converging on a single point in space. Their captains had not waited for official orders. They had seen the code Crimson, and they had responded as humans always responded when their children were threatened. Back on New Sejong, the colonists worked through the night to restore power and communications. Yuna coordinated the security response, channeling her anguish into action because stopping would mean facing the emptiness where her daughter should be. The colony's doctor moved among the injured, treating those hurt during the raid while parents gathered in small groups. Holding each other and weeping, Governor Kim addressed the colony at midnight, his voice hoarse but determined. "Help is coming," he promised them. "Earth has heard us, and they are coming for our children in orbit above the planet." The damaged defense station managed to track the Vrixothi fleet as it jumped to faster than light speed. The trajectory data was transmitted to the incoming human warships, giving them a trail to follow far across the galaxy. Overseer Krathax stood on the bridge of his flagship and reviewed the inventory of their newest acquisitions. 43 young humans, healthy and intact, would fetch excellent prices in the markets of the outer territories. He had heard that humans were clever and adaptable, making them valuable as servants and laborers. A profitable raid. His second-in-command observed. The soft prey put up no real resistance. Krathax made a sound of agreement, his tail swishing with satisfaction. "Humans are weak," he said dismissively. "They have spread across many worlds, but they have grown soft and complacent in their expansion. They will send protests to the Galactic Union." "I assume. Let them protest," Krathax replied with a dismissive gesture. "By the time their bureaucrats finish debating, we will have sold the merchandise and moved on. What the Union does means nothing to us." He turned away from the view screen, confident in the success of his mission. The Vrixothi had raided dozens of species over the centuries, and the response was always the same: angry words, diplomatic complaints, and eventually acceptance. No one went to war over a few dozen children. No one risked their ships and soldiers for such a small matter. But Krathax had made a critical error in his calculations. He had studied human biology and found them unremarkable. He had examined their military capabilities and judged them adequate but not exceptional. He had reviewed their diplomatic history and seen a species willing to compromise and negotiate. What he had not studied, what no intelligence report had warned him about, was what humans became when someone took their children. He did not know about the ancient instinct that lived in every human heart, the protective fury that could turn ordinary parents into unstoppable forces. He did not understand that humans would burn worlds and shatter fleets to bring their children home. He would learn. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable. As his fleet assembled for the pursuit, his officers moved with quiet efficiency, Preparing for a mission that none of them questioned, the Admiral looked at the star chart showing Rixathi space and the path their enemy had taken. Send a message to the Galactic Union, he said quietly. Inform them that we are entering neutral territory in pursuit of criminals who have abducted human children. And if they refuse authorization, sir? His first officer asked. Park turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her step back involuntarily. Then they can try to stop us.